And this at Fox News Alert, there is shocking new video of the destruction left behind by the Bureau of Land Management after it took over Cliven Bundy's ranch in Nevada last week. You have busted water pipes, damaged cattle pens, and dead animals are just some of the examples of the damage that was done. Now, meanwhile, Senator Harry Reid, he's made it very clear that the battle between the federal government and rancher Cliven Bundy is not over. And now Harry's son, Rory, well, he's now doubling down on his father's statement. Watch this.
He is not a victim, and he's not a hero. The facts aren't in dispute. He's been using land that he doesn't own for over 20 years, and he didn't pay. He broke the law. We believe in a country in which we're subject to laws, and we can't just ignore the laws that we don't like. And I think that clearly, if state and federal prosecutors look at this more closely, they're going to find that he broke the law and he should be prosecuted.
And back with us tonight to respond in a Hannity exclusive is rancher Cliven Bundy, and also joining us his son Ammon and his daughter-in-law Brianna. Guys, welcome back to the program. All right, so first Harry Reid says this, Cliven, then we got his son saying it, then we've got that sheriff that I told you about last night, him saying that the feds say this is not over and that, in fact, there might be plans to come back once things have calmed down completely. Are you hearing any of those things, and what's your reaction to it?
Well, you know, I can tell Harry and Harry's son that almost every law, almost every day, no matter whether I walk out of my door or do something with my farm or water my cattle, or they drive up on my ranch, some federal law I'm breaking. I break laws almost every time I turn around, every step I take. But so, Harry, you're right. Your son, you're right. I do break federal laws, evidently, if they're really laws. But I do try to abide by all of the state of Nevada laws, the sovereign state of Nevada laws. I respect very much.
You know,
and our
Cliven,
county laws, our county sheriff, I love them.
You know, Cliven, I've gotten to know you now over this, as this controversy is unfolding. You and your family seem like really nice people. I am concerned that the federal government, from their perspective, think that they look bad. And as a result, they may want to make an example out of you. I would hate to see that happen if, in fact, they tried to stage an Elian Gonzalez-style raid in, early morning, late at night. What's going to happen?
Well, how can they be more blunt than they've already been? They've been hassling me in the courts for 20 years. They send their army after me. And whatever they want to throw at me, I'm ready to take. I'm there, sure not scared of them, that's for sure. When you're ready, get your job done, get with it.
Ammon, when you really break this down, this is what it seems to be about to me. That your dad took his cattle, he thinks it's state land, they're claiming it's federal land, and basically these cattle ate federal grass and you didn't pay for it, and they might have pooped on federal property. I mean, is that really worth hundreds of agents, snipers, and the Senate Majority Leader and his son saying that you ought to be arrested and put away for however long they want to put you away?
Well, if you look at them trying to do this over and over and over again, all over the nation, and them getting away with doing this for many, many years, and then one family or one community stops it, then you think that it kind of puts it in perspective. You start to say, well, yeah, they do have to end this so that they can continue to do what they're doing.
How did they get to $1 million in this, the amount of money they claim you owe? I would imagine the cattle have to eat a lot of grass for a long period of time, and those grazing fees, is most of that money, is that because of, I guess, extra taxes or penalties and some of the court costs associated with all this?
I really don't know. It went from 300,000 to $1 million real quick. But what I do know is if you saw the amount of force and the amount of men they had on the ground over there, you would start to see what kind of payroll bill they have and rental bills and everything else. And the waste is tremendous. So you can start to see how the government can spend $1 million really quick.
Hey, Brianna, one has to ask how much they spent on this operation with the snipers and all these federal officials out there. Are you worried, Brianna, about Cliven, about his sons, about your husband? Are you worried about what the federal government's capable of doing from this point forward?
No, I'm not. I know my family, and we're a family of faith, and we're a family of God, and we know that what we're doing is right for the American people, and we believe that the Lord will protect us, and we saw that on Saturday, and so did the rest of America.
Cliven, last question. If they do come in the middle of the night, will you willingly go with them?
That's a pretty good question. You know, if the county sheriff come to arrest me, yes, I would go with him. These feds, I don't recognize their jurisdiction or authority, so no, I wouldn't go with them.
All right. Well, we're going to watch and continue to watch the story very closely. I suspect that there is political pressure now mounting to go further, and I hope that's not the case. Guys, thank you again for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Now,
Thank you, Sean.
Now, this issue is, in fact, cutting across party lines. My next guest, who I usually agree with, has a completely different opinion about the Bundy's battle with the feds. Joining me now to explain, Fox News contributor Tucker Carlson. Tucker, doesn't it really come down to one simple thing that, all right, the court order was against him. Nobody's not acknowledging that.
Right.
But it really comes down to our federal government sending hundreds of troops, if you will, or hundreds of bureaucrats with guns and snipers because his cows ate federal grass and pooped on federal property, on property that they weren't going to use. Isn't that what it comes down to?
That's the headline as far as I'm concerned. He disobeyed, and so they mounted, as they often do, a completely disproportionate response to this elderly rancher, sending snarling German shepherds and guys with high-powered rifles. I mean, this is what the federal government does. And it's not just the federal government, it's police departments across the country that now look like Delta Force, and it's a scary trend. And I'm with them, I'm with the family completely on this, and I'm in full agreement with you. My only point that I made the other day was, if you use a public resource for profit, you ought to pay something. And that's a pretty conservative principle, I would say. I realize this is a complicated case.
How much grass can cattle eat that you get $1 million fee?
Well, I mean, I'm sure it's, look, your point that the federal government wastes $1 million going to the men's room. I mean, and they certainly wasted more than $1 million hassling the Bundy family is an absolutely correct point. But it's also true to say, again, here's the principle, and it's a conservative principle. If you use public property to make a profit, you ought to pay. I mean, and look, the real problem here is, as you know, that the federal government owns a massively disproportionate percentage of the state of Nevada, and as it does New Mexico and Wyoming and Montana and throughout the West. And that's wrong. And by the way, Harry Reid ought to be speaking up on behalf of his own state. Why do the feds own and control this land? Why don't they return to the state? Why don't they sell it to the people of Nevada?
We don't disagree much at all. You know, it's funny. Right. I went back and Harry Reid, remember Judge Susan Weber Wright saying about Bill Clinton that he gave false, misleading, evasive answers designed to obstruct the judicial process. Intentionally false statements were given. And I was looking at that as he was disbarred, and I'm thinking, oh, really? So he voted to get Clinton off the hook, but he's all for going after this poor rancher. Seems very political to me, and it seems like selective moral outrage once again.
Well, and the principle is the same, which is when the individual stands up disobediently against the state, he's likely to get crushed. And that's scary. And as I've said, I think the Bundys ought to pay for the land that they are using. Yes, I do think that. I'll never stop thinking that.
Maybe Donald Trump's right. Maybe now's the time they can negotiate a settlement, end this, and not risk an Elian Gonzalez mid-morning raid or early morning raid.
And go buy their own ranch. Look, private property is always the answer. Buy something that no one else can control. You want to control the land? Buy it. I believe in private property.
All right, Tucker, we didn't disagree as much as I thought we might. Good to see you.
Thanks, Sean.
And coming up, no topic off limits when Dagan returns for this week's edition of